You are listening to the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Football Podcast with John Impemba and Andrew Cooper.
What is going on, everybody? John Impemba here with Andrew Cooper. This is the Quick Out Fantasy Football Podcast, recording here a day or two before the Fantasy Football Expo, Coop. You and I will be in Canton, Ohio for the FF Expo, getting to network and connect with a bunch of our friendly fantasy football analysts. We'll say that we interact with on a day-to-day basis on Twitter. We get to represent the Fantasy Alarm brand. We're going to have plenty of Fantasy Alarm family members there as well. Howard Bender, Adam Brovinus, Colby Conway, Ryan Hallam, yourself, me, Kev Tompkins, Britt Flynn's going to be there, and even Justin Fensterman is making the drive up. So we're going to have a pretty stacked crew of family members there representing at the FF Expo. So we figured, why not get a podcast out beforehand, breaking down something that I know that you're pretty passionate about, something that you've studied and analyzed, and that is the target totem pole. So that is what we are going to be discussing today, and the impact of targets when it comes to fantasy value.
Yeah, so this is like a secret weapon of mine that I really haven't shared with me. I've kind of shared it with some friends and stuff, but I've never actually published it. This year I'm publishing it. I talked to you. I talked to Howard about it. I think it's an important enough tool. And basically, here's how it works: is we create a target depth chart of what we think the pecking order is going to be for targets. But not only do we do that, but we go in and color code the players with how likely we think they are to get over 100 targets and whether it's possible or not. And that helps you not only identify which guys are kind of locked to take early, but also see where there's some uncertainty and where you can lean into that later in your drafts. My mantra has always been, in the early part of your drafts, you want as much certainty as possible. You want to use your high leverage picks on studs. Later on, though, uncertainty becomes your friend. If you have a team where there's one good player and then there's four that could be the second target, waiting and taking one of those options at a very cheap deal could get you a guy that comes up. We saw it with the Carolina Panthers a couple of years ago when Matt Rule became the coach. Everyone thought DJ Moore would be the top dog. Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel going like wide receiver 64 and 65. Turns out, new organization, things were uncertain. Both Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel ended up being deals. So this is what we're going to do here. We have 5 labels. We're going to look at the top 5 pass catchers on each team with 5 labels. Blue is a lock for over 100 targets. Last year, pretty much every fantasy relevant player, the top 36 wide receivers or so, got 100 targets. That's kind of the bar, the barrier to entry, right? Then we're going to do green for players we think it's likely, but it's not a lock. Yellow for anyone that we think it's possible. Orange for guys where it's an outside shot, but it's not very likely. And then if a guy's labeled red, that means that we think it's not going to happen. You look at a team like the Cincinnati Bengals, for instance, just to give you one off the top, and with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, those guys blue, probably going to be 100. With a guy like Hayden Hearst, if there's that many targets going to those guys, he's probably got to be red. So we'll go through and just hit it on each team, and then I'm going to post this so that you can go in and look at it. But it'll give you an idea of how we feel about it. And when you look at it, if you disagree, that's a place where you can generate value, especially if you disagree with us. You say, hey, I think it goes this way. Draft that guy. Let's get into it, John.
Yeah, so like I said, we'll start off. We'll go team by team here, breaking down the receivers. And you talk about targets. I love talking targets. I'd rather a guy that gets 10 targets a game because it allows for opportunities to score points when we talk weekly fantasy football. You're looking at guys that are on the waiver wires. Checking out targets is a good fat indicator of potential production instead of looking at the guy that may have gotten 4 catches on 4 targets and had a big day. The 4 targets he has to be super efficient on. So I'm with you. I like looking at guys that get a high target volume. And the Arizona Cardinals, so we're kicking it off here. Marquis Brown acquired during the NFL draft. Deandre Hopkins is going to be suspended for the first 6 games of the season. Last year they acquired Zach Ertz. They still have A.J. Green, and they drafted Rondell Moore last year. Many expect him to take a leap forward. How would you go about ranking that wide receiving group when it comes to target value?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, you have to have Marquis Brown first, simply because if DeAndre Hopkins was playing every game, then we'd have him first. But he's going to miss 6 games. That means he's only playing, He's only playing 11 of the games, right? So you can't have him first. I don't think you can even have him second. So I have Marquis Brown as the first one. Zach Ertz as second. DeAndre Hopkins, even missing the games, I think he's going to come back and get the 3rd most targets on the team. And then you round it out with A.J. Green and Rondell Moore. And not the ranking itself for some of these guys isn't necessarily as important when you look at the chart if the colors are the same for certain guys, right? If there's two guys and they're both blue, we don't know for sure who's going to get more targets, but we project them to be towards the top. Same with the second. If you have the guys in spot 3, 4, and 5, and they're all yellow or orange, that means there's some uncertainty as to the order, and you kind of can potentially lean into the later guys. So for these guys, I'm thinking Marquis Brown, blue, lock for over 100, John.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you're just looking at that offense in general, and you looked at how the offense ran last season. Even once Deandre Hopkins comes back, sure, he's going to be a guy that gets the majority of the targets. But Brown will at that point be so far enough ahead that even a slight decrease in him in the second half should still get him over the 100 targets.
Yeah, so we'll have him as blue. Zach Ertz, I think you can put him as green. I don't think he's a lock, but I think there's a good chance that he can get to 100 especially with the suspension to Hopkins. I mean, it might be top heavy with him getting a lot of them early, but it doesn't really matter necessarily how you get there. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, listen, I think that's proved last year that when Hopkins went down with that injury, he was among the best tight ends in fantasy football. And he proven that he and Kyler Murray actually have a really good connection with one another. So I'm almost a little bit more bullish on Ertz just in general as the fantasy asset this year. And it wouldn't shock me knowing how much that we think that the Cardinals are going to throw the football if Ertz can still get over that 100 target mark, even when Hopkins is back, even with Marquis Brown playing alongside of him this season.
Yeah, the thing is, did get 112 last year, but I mean, we didn't get a very big sample size of games with Hopkins. So while I am a believer in Ertz and I'm drafting Ertz and I wrote the article on all that, I feel like we have to be as objective as possible with this sheet and as conservative as possible. I think saying he's likely to get over 100 is the conservative answer versus a lock.
Sure.
But for the blue ones, there's enough guys that we know they're going to get 140 or 130 targets. And those guys, I think, is where you slap the blue on there and call them locks. If it's a guy that we say, I think he can do it, or I think he will do it, those will make him green. So we got Brown as blue, Ertz, green. Hopkins, I'm putting as yellow, where it's possible for him to get over 100, but he's only playing 11 games. So that's a serious target share. We're talking like 8-9 targets a game. Yeah. And then AJ Green and Rondell Moore. What do you think? Orange for those guys, that it's possible, or is it either of those guys to you? Do you look at him and say there's no chance?
I don't feel like Rondell Moore is going to get there. He has at the very least 3 guys ahead of him in the pecking order, depending on how you feel about AJ Green. And it would take something I think it would take an injury to Brown included with the Hopkins absence for him to really see a high target share. Not a lot of people are high on him this year. They're expecting him to break out given where the draft capital investment was with him last year, but I don't see where he fits in a role with this offense. I don't know. Do you see him like starting slot receiver getting a bunch of targets, or do you see him more so falling behind like a Marquis Brown in sort of the role that he plays?
Yeah, so that's the real problem, is that I think he's going to be a guy like on first down when you start the game, you're pulling out all the stops and you have him slot. But he was really bad at run blocking last year. And you saw it not only in the stats from Pro Football Focus, but in the highlights too. Like he had one opportunity to really prove himself, and he got a holding penalty that could have been a huge play for Kyler. So I think that he does end up coming out. He's the guy that comes out of the game when you are going 3 wide receivers or you're going with blocking sets. So, I mean, if Deandre Hopkins wasn't suspended, both AJ Green and Rondell Moore would be red for sure on this chart. So yeah. I say, what we're basically doing here is we're bumping Green up to orange, and that's fair. So I think that looks pretty good.
Yeah, because to me, Green is going to start in place of Hopkins here until Hopkins is back. So
exactly, he's going to be a full-time split end. He's the big guy that can tether his foot to the line. He'll be out there every snap. Okay, so let's go down to the Falcons.
Yep. So Atlanta, this is obviously I think a big point of contention for most. Atlanta Falcons: Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Cordarrelle Patterson, Bryan Edwards, and Olamide Zacchaeus potentially there as your top pass catching options. Marcus Mariota at quarterback. I think we can certainly lock in Kyle Pitts. I'm not going to argue with the target volume that Kyle Pitts is going to get, and I probably feel the same way about Drake London as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair to make them both, for the sake of this chart, blue. I think it's going to be top heavy enough. And with some of these guys, it almost ends up being by default, right? If this team still had, if they didn't lose Russell Gage to the Bucks, who then also lost Russell Gage, then there'd be more of an argument against making him blue. But in this case, I think it's top heavy enough that both those dudes are pretty much locks for over 100. And then after that, we're just sorting out where the rest of them go. And I don't think any of these other guys should even be yellow. I don't think anybody is even really in that range where you're like, yeah, it's possible. I think
the only thing I could potentially see is if they move Patterson back to a wide receiver and they just commit to the running backs that they have on their roster as a running back. Whether it's Algier, Damian Williams, like whomever. If they, at some point, recommit to Patterson as sort of a wide receiver, then maybe he finds his way into getting a volume of targets. But, again, this is an offense where Marcus Mariota's never thrown more than 450 passes in his career in a single season. They're going to run a lot of RPOs. I don't know if he even throws 500 times this year. And if he's not throwing that many times, where are all these targets going? So
yeah, I mean, he would need... First of all, anytime we have two guys that are blue, I don't like making the third guy that high, just because it's so rare. You know what I mean? There have been a few instances of teams that did have three players all getting 100+ targets, and it should happen more often now that there's an extra game. But last year, depending on where you look, there was either no team. So if you go to Pro Football Focus, they said no team last year had 3 guys all get 100+ targets. And there's a couple sites like Pro Football Reference that had the Cowboys just barely doing it. Yeah. But historically speaking, it doesn't happen that often. Patterson last year only had 69 targets in 16 games, so it would take a pretty big jump. I feel best putting it as unlikely. I mean, that leaves the door open that it's possible, but I don't think it's super likely.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think it's super likely either.
Yeah. And then the other two guys we have here, we have Bryan Edwards and Olamide Zacchaeus as the next two. We don't know who's going to win that kind of third role. They could, in 3 wide receiver sets where Kyle Pitts is actually playing tight end, they could both be out there. But I think what ends up happening is one of them is playing a full-time role with Pitts occupying the third wide receiver spot often and them using an extra tight end. So I think only one of these guys can sneak in as like a DFS dart throw. So I'm putting them both back there. I think I give Bryan Edwards the leg up a little bit, but I don't even really know why. John, do you have an opinion?
I mean, my thinking with Edwards is simply that Mariota was the backup quarterback in Las Vegas. So I don't know if we talk all the time. Like, is it a coincidence when, quarterback wide receiver relationships, all of a sudden they sort of refine themselves at times playing together? So Mariota comes over into Atlanta, and all of a sudden Atlanta makes a trade for Bryan Edwards. Does that seem like a connection there? To me, it does. So.
Yep. No, I like that. That's a narrative right there, and I like that.
If there was ever one, like, why else would Atlanta go out and trade for Bryan Edwards? So
right, and we're talking these guys are essentially wide receiver handcuffs. Like, whoever is the next guy, you're only interested in him in normal fantasy leagues if one of Pitts or London goes down. Correct. So that's where we're at now. Just double checking: London blue rather than green.
Correct.
Okay.
That's where I'm at. Right. That's where I'm at. Baltimore Ravens. Mark Andrews had a breakout season last year. Definitely going to be a guy that's going to go over 100, probably go over 120. Rashad Bateman, we saw what Marquis Brown did last season. Really strong year. Many people, including yourself, super high on Bateman. I would put him as blue as well. But after that, it gets questionable. I don't know if I would have anybody as yellow. I think they may be green, orange, or red for me when it comes to targets here.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I think they should all be red. I think the first top two, because of the way the offense works, and I wrote about it in the Rashad Bateman article, if you go on our page or just Google Andrew Cooper or Fantasy Alarm Rashad Bateman, they use so many blocking tight ends and fullbacks. And Patrick Ricard last year was playing legit 60 to 70% of the snaps when he was healthy. We're not even talking like just half the snaps. Some of these games he was playing 70% of the snaps. Every time you use a guy like that, takes a wide receiver off the field. And every time Nick Boyle plays, takes a wide receiver off the field. So for me, like, I look at it and I say, I would be shocked if J.K. Dobbins got 100 targets. It's not something that happens in this offense. It's not something that happens very often in many offenses. I mean, it's a couple years ago, before Christian McCaffrey came around, there were like 2 dudes in the history of the league as running backs that had 100 targets. It was like LaDainian Tomlinson and Larry Center. So, like, for me, the guys that I'm putting as even possible to get 100 targets, they got to be like stud receiving backs. So Dobbins, I don't think it's possible, and I have him third. I don't know if you think Duvernay or Nick Boyle or somebody should be ahead of. No, you like the
this is a run-heavy offense, and they have a very consolidated target share, so I don't see a reason to have anybody else even considered for that many targets, in my opinion. So
right.
Next team, I think we could maybe see a third guy, but I think Stephon Diggs 100% with Buffalo is going to easily clear that, probably be among the target leaders, in my opinion. Gabe Davis, I guess, is really the question. And you have the depth chart sort of listed out here. So I gotta get your answer. You have Isaiah McKenzie listed. Obviously, going into the year, a lot of people were in on Jamison Crowder. McKenzie getting the bigger camp hype. Is that how you're looking at it?
That's how I'm looking at it, and I believe that the Bills had to give a depth chart to reporters, and they had Mckenzie in that spot. So I wasn't on Crowder, but as of now, we have to go with what we're hearing and seeing. But if it changes, then we'll change the chart. We're going to do our best to keep this updated, but for now, we have to assume that Mckenzie's in that slot spot just because he's been running ahead, and that's how they have him on the chart. So for me, I got to have him in that position, whoever it is, whichever guy moves in that spot. And then Crowder could even be fifth, but I have James Cook here just because I think if they wanted to get J.D. McKissic, couldn't get him. They went out, they drafted James Cook. I feel like they're going to use him. So the question here ends up being Diggs, clearly blue. Gabe Davis, we can't put him blue. The guy has his best season so far is 35 catches. Do you think he's a likely over 100 guy or a possible over 100 guy?
I think he's likely an over 100 guy because they didn't bring in anybody to replace that role. I mean, I think he's going to get it. Again, I know we're talking about likely. We're not trying to talk certainties, but Cole Beasley is a guy that has gotten over 100 targets like in this offense. So we've seen the number 2 receiver in this offense be someone that has success, right? 3 straight years over 100 targets for Cole Beasley. They didn't bring in anybody really to replace Emmanuel Sanders or John Brown. You got those guys that were there before. They kept on bringing someone in. Now this is Gabe Davis's role, right? So if somebody else has to get 100 targets on this offense next to Stephon Diggs, to me, Davis is the guy that steps in there and does this.
It's likely him. And then for the other 2 guys, I would just say that because Cole Beasley got 100 targets in that slot role, I'll say that whoever's playing that slot role, it becomes possible. So for me, I'll label Dawson Knox as yellow, saying it's possible, and Isaiah McKenzie yellow, saying it's possible. Everyone else, unlikely. I would just go as far as say it's not possible. So for like James Cook, I don't think he's getting 100 targets. He'll be labeled red. So you cool with Knox and McKenzie being labeled yellow? Because it is, like last year,
Knox would be surprising, but I could see it.
It could happen.
It feels like a long shot, though.
I don't know, man. Last year he broke his hand and he had 71 in 15 games. I mean, it could be. Again, they're losing. They lost their flanker. I was a guy that was off Knox, but this year I just think that the uncertainty with the whole moving forward with no flanker, like they had John Brown, they had Emmanuel Sanders. Now they're moving Davis over to that role. I think for me, I think it's possible enough.
That's fine. He was on a 17-game pace for 80 targets last year. So,
and when I like to kind of also have a check and balance thing where I do the math on where it. Maybe he should be. Do you think Isaiah McKenzie should be ahead of Dawson Knox on this sheet?
I would think that they would probably throw to the receiver over the tight end more, in my opinion.
Okay. I'll switch it right now. And we'll make Dawson Knox orange.
Because, even Emmanuel Sanders last year was on pace for almost 90 targets over 17 games. So they throw to the receivers in this offense more than it seems like they throw to the tight end. So they also throw a lot. Josh Allen throws a ton. So targets are definitely going to be there. Carolina Panthers, DJ Moore. We know what his target share has been like. Christian McCaffrey, if he's healthy, 100 targets seems almost a lock. I don't think we're going to give him the blue, but he probably is probably a good chance of being blue. Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, and Ian Thomas round out that group.
Yeah, I think you got to make DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey blue. I mean, McCaffrey, when because we're not projecting injuries into this unless the guy is actually hurt or out. So Michael Gallup right now is hurt, so we're going to project that. Christian McCaffrey's not hurt, and when you look at Dr. David Chow has a website now where they include all factors and try and come up with an injury score that they think whether they think guys are going to get hurt or not. And I saw that he's a 95 out of 100 on that site, which I don't really know the scale or the intricate details, but from what the tweets about have been saying is that they don't think that the rolled ankle from last year is something that at this point is a big risk of re-injury any more than any other running back just for playing running back. I'm willing to put it there. Robbie Anderson, probably because those 2 guys are blue, he can't be higher than yellow, I don't think.
I agree. I mean, he did get he had 110 targets last year, but obviously no McCaffrey changes that.
Yeah. And then we rounded out Terrace Marshall, probably should be red. I'll put him.
Ian Thomas, Marshall, in my opinion, is better than Robbie Anderson, but I don't think they're going to play him that way. So
I know. Huge hit to Terrace Marshall that they fired the coach from LSU that was the offensive coordinator there, Miles, because that was his in, right? Like you have the offensive coordinator and then you draft the player that played for him in college. That was Terrace Marshall's direct line to move up quickly. And then once they fired him, you have to say that it hurts him a little bit. They changed the offense from one that he knows, and now it's kind of a big changing course. So that was a setback for him at least. But I still like him in Dynasty. I'm holding on to him.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's do the Bears.
All right, so the Bears is interesting because we have Darnell Mooney, top guy last year. Colt Kmet, a guy you and I both are big fans of. David Montgomery, the running back, I feel is a question because we've heard that they like Khalil Herbert. They're going to rotate both running backs and how they're going to run that offense. Plus, then we know that mobile quarterbacks don't tend to throw to the running back often, and we know Fields is expected to run a lot. You have Byron Pringle, you got Velus Jones that they drafted in the second round this year. So
yeah,
ugly.
This one, bro.
I think it's Darnell Mooney, and then maybe Cole Kmet, and then I don't even know if the others would get there.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm thinking Mooney blue. He had 140 targets last year. He's getting 100. Cole Kmet had 93 last year. I can't put him blue because I can't guarantee the targets, but I think they're going to be there. So he's green. After that, I've just read. Everybody read across the board. I had Montgomery just now as orange, but I would be shocked if Montgomery got 100 targets, especially like you said with a mobile quarterback. I think this is just going to be one of those offenses where the quarterback is running so much that it saps just the fantasy value in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's think about basketball, man. If the point guard is shooting all the time, there's not a lot of assists out there. So that's the way it's got to be for this Bears offense. And the rounds out Byron Pringle, Velus Jones, but I don't think anybody in their right mind would suggest that those guys are locks or even likely to get 100.
Yeah, no, it would have to take a huge, I think, leap forward in their game plan of like just throwing downfield for either of those guys to take a step forward, I think. So, and we don't really know what that Bears offense is going to look like, but a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, still no offensive line there. So definitely some question marks outside of the top two. We don't have question marks really, though, with the next team. That's the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think Joe Burrow may contend to lead the league in pass attempts this year, truthfully. So you have Jamar Chase, you have T. Higgins, you have Tyler Boyd. I think the first two should be blue. I think I think Tyler Boyd could be yellow. And then
I think Boyd could be green, honestly.
Okay.
Like, it's super highly consolidated. There's going to be, and I'm the guy that says it doesn't happen because it doesn't happen. Like, it doesn't happen that often for three guys to all get 100 plus targets. But if we're predicting a team to do it, I think this is a team to go with. And I think that Tyler Boyd, he had 94 last year. He missed a game.
True.
So I think two blues and a green likely. And then everybody else is.
Yeah, I don't think Mixon's going to get them. I think you could see Evans get more targets than Mixon the way they're talking about Evans potentially getting over Samaje Perine this year. And then they're not going to throw to the tight end Hayden Hearst. As much as Howard Bender likes the idea of Hayden Hearst there.
Hayden Hearst is a good guy. We can move Hearst ahead of Mixon then just because of Chris Evans. Yeah. I think that's fair because I think you can, and your opinion on Boyd, whether you think he's a green or a yellow, it doesn't really matter because it's like he's going to have somewhere between 90. If everyone stays healthy, he'll have somewhere between 90 and 100. And you're splitting hairs. But I think that of all the teams, this is one, like you said, they could lead the league in passing. There's an extra game now. If I had to bet on one team to have three guys get 100 targets, I would pick this team. So I think I'm willing to go blue-green.
I'm with you. I think that's fair. Again, we know they're going to throw a ton, so there's a really good chance that Boyd gets there, and Chase and Higgins are going to get there for sure. Big question mark with Cleveland, though. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. And depending on who the quarterback's going to be, I think is how it impacts how many of these guys may get to that target mark. Amari Cooper, I think you can for sure lock in, but how do you rank the rest of those guys? Njoku, Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Bell, and even Kareem Hunt still being there, assuming he's still there after requesting his trade.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not making any play. So Amari Cooper is going to be blue. No other player is going to even be green. Where we say it's likely they get 100. Everyone else, we're deciding whether it's possible or unlikely. So I would say David Njoku second, and I think it's possible he gets 100, but I wouldn't project it. I wouldn't predict it. He's one of those ones where you take a stab on him at his ADP just because it's a possibility he could be the second target on the team, but it's not like Cole Kmet where we could be confident. So I think it goes Njoku, then Peoples-Jones, and then the real question is rounding it out whether you think it's a rookie David Bell or Kareem Hunt, if he stayed healthy last year, would have had 50-plus targets. So he probably should be fourth over. No, I think maybe as a slot guy, Bell could be fourth. So I would go Bell, then Kareem Hunt, but both those guys just read no chance they get 100 targets unless something crazy happened. It's just not a team that throws like that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think if Watson's quarterback, that could change. You're not going to pay Watson all that money to hand the ball off to Nick Chubb 300 times. I think they're going to throw. So if the suspension is only 6 games, which it won't be. Goodell wants a year. He's going to get a year. But until that comes down, I agree with you how we have it. Dallas, Dak Prescott, that offense has been one of the higher volume passing offenses in football over the last few years. Obviously, the receiving group taking a hit. No more Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup not going to be ready for the year. James Washington out. So CeeDee Lamb, for sure, lock him in. Could be among the target leaders this year. Dalton Schultz last year had a breakout season. And then you got rookie Jalen Tolbert as probably the guy that's starting alongside those three to start the year, given the injuries.
Yeah, man, Schultz, dude, he played every game last year and he had 104 targets. If Michael Gallup was healthy, I think I wouldn't have Schultz any higher than yellow. With Gallup hurt, kind of got to make him green, that it's likely he gets 100, John.
I agree.
Yeah, I love Dalton Schultz. The thing about Dalton Schultz is he's not good versus man-to-man. He's not particularly athletic. He doesn't really create for himself. He's more of an afterthought type player. But, this is the team that led the league in touchdowns last year. They're always the top 5 in pass attempts every year. So you got to have him up there. But, he's a guy, if I draft him, I'm still drafting another tight end. But that was last week's episode. So, yeah, CeeDee Lamb, blue, Schultz, green, Gallup, possible. I say he's got to be possible yellow because he could come back and do it.
I mean, he could, but he would need to get a ton of targets over the final 11 games, and that's assuming he comes back and is just immediately ready to go play a full run. So,
but I'm doing the same thing like you just did. Just now, you did what I've been doing. Where in my mind, because DeAndre Hopkins suspended 6 games, I look at Godwin and Gallup and I say 6 games, but Gallup could miss 1 game. He could miss 2 games. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know how many games he's going to miss. So I think he's got
a year on IR. Doesn't he have to miss a certain amount of games?
No, because he can start the season on the PUP list. When you start on the PUP list from that, the PUP list the rules are so weird. The PUP list that carries over from preseason, I think you can come back. I think it's only 4 games, or you might be able to come back at any point. But he had 62 targets in only 9 games last year. And he cracked 100 both the years before that. That's why I got to put him as yellow there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Otherwise, if he wasn't...
I always worry a little bit on injury guys because, unlike a suspension where Hopkins comes back, he's not hurt. He's just ready to go. He's been running around practicing. The guys come back from injury, and then they're on, a 30-snap count, and then they're on, a 60-snap count, or percent snap count, and then it kind of, increases up from there. So he may miss 4 games, but he might not be playing full snaps until 8 games or something like that. So... that's kind of where I worry a little bit sometimes with these injury guys, but it all depends on the circumstance.
Okay, well, as we get closer to the season, when we see what the designation is and where he goes, then we'll adjust that one. But for now, I think that it's fair to say that it's possible. Okay, so they're required to miss at least 4 games. So if he's, it's
iffy. It's iffy for me. But yeah, if it's at least 4 and he's fully ready to go, then that's great. If it's 4 and he is eased back into the workload, who knows how long it takes him to get those full reps.
Yeah, so he needs to get over 7 targets a game when he comes back, too, if he misses 4 games. We'll make him orange. I think that's fair. I think that's right. Yeah. Okay. And if he avoids the PUP list, meaning they think that he can play within those first 4 games, we're switching him back to yellow.
Yep, that's fair.
Okay, Broncos.
I mean, Jerry Judy, for me, I've been talking it all offseason. I think he's the number 1 guy in this offense. He was the best receiver coming out of that draft class, and I think he landed in an awful spot a couple years ago. A good chance, but now with Russell Wilson to bounce back. Same thing with Courtland Sutton. We've seen Russell Wilson support DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett to 1,000-yard years and 100-target seasons. So both of those guys, to me, are perfectly in the blue.
Oh, blue. And I just did the article that I do on looking at Vegas odds. Here's the crazy one for me, and why we have Judy ahead of Sutton, is that Vegas has Sutton at 925 yards over under and 5.5 touchdowns. And they have Judy at 950 yards and 6.5 touchdowns. So Vegas is kind of projecting Judy to be better in both categories. Yet Sutton's going ahead in ADP. I think that's something we saw last year with Brandon Ayuk was going ahead of Deebo Samuel, but Vegas had Deebo Samuel with a higher over under than Brandon Ayuk. They kind of knew something we didn't know. In this instance, I'm willing to trust Vegas enough to just take Jerry Judy at his ADP. And like you said, we've kind of been taking Judy ahead of Sutton. So that's how I have it set. And then for the rest of these guys, I'm putting Alberto, Orange, Hamler, and Marvin both red. It's
so you
not
wouldn't have Javonte over Gordon? I think he had more catches and targets last year, didn't he?
Yeah, put him on there. I mean, they both played virtually the same number of pass plays, but I think Williams, even with the missed game for Melvin, would have had more receptions. So, yeah, we'll put Javonte.
43 catches, 53 targets for Javonte Williams last year. Melvin had 28 and 38.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, Javonte had. So, but still red because as long as there's two of them, it's just not going to happen.
Unless, like you said, unless we both misread this situation, right? Where we think that Melvin Gordon's going to go right back into a 45% work share or whatever it is, then yeah. So I think how we have it is correct.
Yep. Yeah. That one became a lot easier when Tim Patrick got hurt, honestly.
I agree with you. Lions have Hawkinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, DeAndre Swift, and Jameson Williams as their top cashing options here. I know that you've taken a lot of hate about Amon-Ra St. Brown. Do you feel that he is, despite the target competition, a guy that we can rely on for 100 targets?
I don't know. You know what I mean? Last year, when everyone was healthy, Hawkinson and Swift led the team. I still think Hawkinson is probably the target leader on this team. It could be Amon-Ra St. Brown. It could be DJ Chark. It could be DeAndre Swift. And Jameson Williams, we don't know. It could just be that when Jameson Williams comes back, he's the best player on the team by far. You never know with these teams that were complete skeleton crews one year, which is devoid of talent. And the next year, when the talent comes in, everything shifts. Like the biggest example was with Jared Goff when they were on the Rams. Like Kenny Britt had well over 100 targets. He had over 1,000 yards, but they were kind of tanking. They were still doing a rebuild. Then when they brought in all the wide receivers like Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp and all these guys, it was clear that Kenny Britt was basically just the one-eyed king in the land of the blind. Yeah. So now that we have these guys coming in, a lot of hype about DJ Chark making all these diving catches and stuff. For me, when people look at this, they might care who's first. TJ Hawkinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. To me, it doesn't matter. I think all these guys, all four of these top guys are, in my opinion, are yellow, where it's possible that they all get over 100 targets and we don't know for sure. So I think it should be Hawkinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, DeAndre Swift, all essentially on the same tier in terms of who could get the most targets, all yellow, as in it's possible. Throw James Williams at the end as unlikely.
I'm with you. Next group could be a similar situation, right? Alan Lazard, Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Randall Cobb for the Green Bay Packers. We don't know necessarily who's going to be the top guys here. Right now, Watson's been dealing with an injury. Dobbs been popping up in practice. A lot of people are expecting Alan Lazard to step in and be that number one receiver. And we know there's some value with Aaron Jones in PPR, and Randall Cobb is the best friend of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it's a mess, man. I'd be willing to put, just with all the talk from Rodgers himself, of him saying now Lazard gets to be the number one wide receiver. And he used to have to block a ton. Now he gets to catch passes. It's kind of interesting that he's saying these things. He's saying a lot of things that fantasy gamers say. Rodgers coming out saying there's going to be just as many targets and touchdowns. It's just a matter of where they go now. That's the fantasy gamer thing to say. Yeah. Quarterbacks don't usually say that. So I'm willing to put Lazard as green, as in he's likely. And then I don't know. I think Aaron Jones is the most possible to get 100 after him. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but he got the second most targets on this team in 2020. So, but it might be another case where it's unlikely. Who would you have second out of these guys? Watson, Romeo Doubs, Cobb?
No, I think as you have it is probably how I would consider it. Unless Watson is maybe ready to go, but it depends on how much time he ends up missing, in my opinion. So I think Aaron Jones could be that guy this year. I really do.
Yeah, and you could even throw Tunyon as the sixth guy on there. Just not super exciting. He played every game in 2020, and he had 59 targets. He had less than Aaron Jones. That's why, coming off an ACL, I don't think all of a sudden now he's going to become this guy that is just dominating targets. So with the Packers, yeah, that's one of the ones where it's kind of just pick the guy that you like and take a stab on him, because one of these guys, I feel like no question, one of these guys is going to be a huge value at their ADP. It's just a matter of picking the right one.
Yeah. I think that's fair. And right now a lot of the people are kind of moving up, so it'll be interesting to see how it breaks down. What are your thoughts on the next team with the Houston Texans?
Yeah, this one, Brandon Cooks, clearly blue. He's the best player on the team, and the only one that there's not a lot of uncertainty around. So for me, he's the top dog. He's blue. He's perennially undervalued in drafts. I think he's the guy where you can feel good about taking him where he goes. Nico Collins, I'm going to have next, just because John Mechie, unfortunately, diagnosed with lymphoma, I believe it is. So he's done for the season with cancer. Unfortunately, hopefully he gets well soon. So Nico Collins, I have second. And then third, I would have been more comfortable with Brevin Jordan, before all these reports that Pharaoh Brown is the starter, quote unquote, even though he's more block happy, and like trade for Adam Shaheen. I think Brevin Jordan is third still, but I'm moving him to orange just because before it seemed like, okay, we had a pretty good shot. Now I think it's pretty clearly Nico Collins having the best shot, and then Jordan being orange. After that, it's just, this is not an offense where you want to invest heavily. So I'm going with Rex Burkhead as a guy that, is going to be probably the pass catching back. And then Chris Conley is probably the best wide receiver on the team after that, which more speaks to the lack of talent on the team. It's like John Mechie was a high draft pick that was supposed to be the next guy. He's unfortunately not going to play. So you're back to a situation you were in last year where you just have these guys that are just guys.
Yeah, I got a tweet out earlier today saying that Nico Collins is quietly having a breakout camp. So we'll see how that translates to regular season play. But, if they're going to be behind a lot of games, they're going to throw a lot. So we could have a breakout year from Nico Collins here as well, just by default.
Yeah, he's, to me, like I always comped him to Kenny Golladay. He's got the same size, same size and speed, like physically. They were drafted with the same draft capital, third round picks, right around 90. I think Collins actually went a little earlier than Golladay, and similar play style. So it's all up to Davis Mills, but I think Nico Collins is such a great stab at ADP just because when you look at who could be the second target after Cooks, he's starting to look like a shoe-in now. So, yeah, pretty easy one there.
Indianapolis Colts. We have Michael Pittman. I think we certainly locked that one in.
Lock him in.
Then it's some questions after that. Rookie Alec Pierce. Does Paris Campbell stay healthy? Nyheim Hines. How many targets does he end up finding himself getting? And then who is the starting tight end? Does Kylan Granson become that pass-catching option for them? Does he find himself behind Mo Alley Cox? Some big questions there as well.
Yeah, I think Mo Alley, these are very similar situations in terms of the tight end, Texans and Colts, where my opinion is that the starting tight ends are too block heavy to be particularly relevant in fantasy. Mo Alley Cox, Pharaoh Brown. Mo Alley Cox blocked more than any other tight end on the team last year, more than Jack Doyle. He blocked on over 50% of his plays in general, blocked on a ton of pass plays. I don't see those guys breaking out being relevant. It's either going to be Brevin Jordan or Kylan Granson in a like secondary Mike Gesicki type role where they're relevant, or it's going to be no one. That's why, for me, I put Kylan Granson on the sheet and Brevin Jordan on the sheet, even though there's a chance that they're just not relevant. But, you look at last year with the Dolphins, Durham Smythe played over 700 snaps. Mike Gesicki played over 800. Smythe was technically the inline tight end. Gesicki was the slot guy. That's what you're hoping for out of these guys, but we don't know. But so for me, I'm willing to take a stab on them deep in drafts, but you have to really recognize that they might not even play a full snap share. They could end up being like Anthony Ferguson or Cameron Brate. So It's kind of scary. It's not something you want to hang your hat on. You definitely take him as like a second late tight end. But,
yep, I'm with you. Jacksonville Jaguars played a lot of money. Christian Kirk, he's coming off of a career season with Arizona, signed in the offseason. Marvin Jones is the incumbent there. They signed Evan Ingram. Travis Etienne making his expected debut after missing all of last season. And then Zay Jones, another guy that Jacksonville went out and paid a lot of money to. They give him $14 million guaranteed, $8 million per year. Kirk, for me, I think is locked in because you don't pay a man that much money without throwing him the football. And then after that, I think there's some conversations to be had.
Yeah, I think you're right. Kirk, blue. I mean, the Evan Ingram fan in me wants to make Kirk green here and say anybody could lead the team in targets, but I think they paid him enough. He's a good enough player. He had 100 targets last year, so he's blue. And then I have Marvin Jones and Evan Ingram both as yellow. Both equally potentially likely to be the second target on the team. Marvin Jones kind of getting up there. Travis Etienne, I say we make him orange. It's probably unlikely he gets 100 targets, right? I mean, the guys that do get 100 targets are just like such studs that I'm not willing to say it's not possible, though. So I think we put him in that category where it's possible. And then Zay Jones, man, I've never been sold on the guy. I think, honestly, Derek Carr is just a better quarterback than people give credit for, and that's why other teams are paying these guys like Nelson Aguilar and Zay Jones, but I don't really think they're overall that amazing. So I really don't see Zay Jones getting 100 targets. I don't know about you, John.
I mean, he flashed pretty well at the second half of last season, but I probably agree with you. For me, it's more so just the money thing. Like, are you paying a guy like that not to throw him the football?
We make him orange. I say we make him orange, right? Okay. It's making a guy orange is saying it's unlikely. So if it's at all we only want to have the guys red where it's not possible. Like with the Cowboys, I'm willing to put Zeke as red just because I think he's going to be get his pass catching snaps, but Tony Pollard's there and they have the other guys. So I don't think it's possible for him to get over 100. But like Zay Jones, it is possible. So we'll make him orange.
Yeah, I'm with you. Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelsey, still there. No Tyreek Hill anymore, but they replaced him with Juju Smith-Schuster. Drafted Sky Moore, signed Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and still have Mecole Hardman. Kelsey, I think we lock in for the over 100 for sure. I think it's next is a battle between Juju and Sky Moore as the number 2 target.
Yeah, I'm willing to make Juju green. I think that he's the veteran. He's playing a role that's conducive to a lot of targets when you're like that short yardage guy versus like deeper guys. So just target-wise, that's where I would have him as likely to get 100. Now the question is with those short guys is that, we see a lot of these guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown with this 7-yard average depth of target. He gets over 100 targets, doesn't crack 1,000 yards. So that's the next discussion that needs to be had. But this is just a target discussion. We'd be on this podcast all day if we started getting into the next things. I mean, we already got to kind of pick up the pace. So I would say Kelsey, blue, Juju, I'm willing to go orange. Sky Moore, yellow. Like I think it's possible he gets 100. And then with the 2 field stretchers, MVS and Hardman, unlikely. I mean, they could, just because it's possible, it's up for grabs. So you got a lot of color here. A lot of times what you see is you'll see a team where it's like the guys at the top are just blue and everyone else is red, or one guy's blue and everyone else is somewhere in that yellow or orange area, which that kind of uncertainty helps you out when you're taking stabs later. But I think that for this team, it seems pretty clear that it's certain at the very top, and then it gets more uncertain as you go down.
A team that does not get uncertain is the Los Angeles Chargers. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. Perfect
example. This is a perfect example. I should have just waited 2 seconds, right? Because this is the perfect example of what I was just talking about. Like we'll make Keenan Allen and Mike Williams blue, and we can make Austin Eckler green, and then everybody else is red.
Yeah.
Like Austin Eckler, him and Tyler Boyd had near identical stats last year. You know what I mean? Like they get the same amount of receiving prowess, and Burke could easily have 100 targets. So blue, green, everyone else red. Next team.
That was the easy one, right?
Yeah, that's the easiest one.
The next one I think is also in that similar range. Los Angeles Rams, you got Cooper Kupp, 190 targets to his name last year. Allen Robinson, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, Cam Akers, top 2 guys blue. The rest of that group, maybe orange and red, right? Like Van Jefferson, orange, red Higbee, red Akers, maybe.
I think that's exactly right. You have to give the respect to Van Jefferson as the 3rd guy with no Odell, nobody else there, that it's possible, especially with a team that throws this much and uses this many 3 wide receiver sets. You have to suggest that it's possible for Van. He could even be, some people out there could have him as yellow. Because of his field stretching role, he doesn't even need as many targets to be relevant. So I think he's orange.
I'm with you. Next team, where are we looking at when it comes to the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, Tyreek Hill has to be blue. Jalen Waddle, I think blue too, right? The public sentiment, he runs that low A dot stuff where it's largely possible. But I think here's the question. You got to make Tyreek blue. Jalen Waddle is either blue or green. And what you do there really affects your opinion on Gesicki. Because if Hill and Waddle get over 100 targets, Gesicki needs to be orange. If you have Waddle as a maybe 100 targets, then you can have Gesicki as a maybe unlikely type guy. But
I mean, I think honestly, I think those top 2 guys are blue.
Yeah, so if those top 2 are blue, then Gesicki has to be orange, and that means you shouldn't be taking Gesicki in any of your drafts at ADP, which is something we've talked about. And then everybody, Chase Edmonds, we'll round it out. Chase Edmonds, and then Cedric Wilson as the slot player, pretty good player. On a different team, I would feel better about this guy. It's just it's not set up to be a good situation for him. So he's on the list, but he's red. He's not getting 100.
Minnesota Vikings, they have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen as their top 2 guys. Do you think Thielen is a blue? We know Jefferson is.
Dude, Thielen I look at it. Thielen rolled his ankle in week 11. He came back and kind of played in 2 games, but he had 90 targets in those 11 games. Even if you want to play those, if you want to count those other 2 games, one of them he played 9 snaps in. He got 95 targets. For me, I don't see why Thielen wouldn't get 100 targets.
I'm with you. I just know that people continue to tout the downfall of Adam Thielen now for 3 years. So
I know. Yeah, awesome, man. I mean, I've watched videos of him in camp. He looks like himself. You know what I mean? So
as long as he doesn't get hurt. It was a hamstring problem 2 years ago. It was the ankle last year. He's fine.
The year before, people keep saying he missed games the year before that. He had COVID. That's an illness. It's not an injury. So, But I'm willing to put KJ Osborne as orange. There's a possibility he busts out as like this. I don't know. He's a 5th round pick.
Yeah, well, people are high on him because they're low on Adam Thielen. That's all it is.
Exactly. The new coach uses a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. It's the guy from Kevin O'Connell comes over from the Rams, and he's using 3 wide receiver sets. That's why he has to be orange.
So he becomes the Van Jefferson of this offense. Like,
exactly.
Fantastic.
Yep. Looks the same.
That did nothing for fantasy the majority of the time.
I think that's fair in our chart for us to look at those 2 offenses and have them the same color codes because it's the same offense.
Yep. New England Patriots, big question marks here. Devontae Parker, Jacoby Myers, top 2 receivers. Hunter Henry last year tied for team league lead in touchdowns for tight ends. Kendrick Bourne, and then Pierre Strong is the rookie running back, sort of taking over the James White, expected to take over the James White role. We've seen a lot of good reports out of camp about 2nd round pick Tyquan Thornton as well. Do you think that he may find his way into a bigger role this offseason, or do you kind of like how we have it laid out with Parker, Myers, Henry, Bourne as the top 4?
I think Tyquan Thornton is the problem is the type of player he is. He's a thin, speedy field stretcher type. So he's in the same camp as Aguilar. If you give those guys, if you were to give him 150 targets, then he's Tyreek Hill with the type of routes. You know what I mean? He's definitely an interesting stab in best ball, but I just don't see him getting those targets. And this team for me is going to look a lot when you look at the sheet, and we're going to have the sheet up by the time this podcast is out, hopefully, so that you can look at this while you're listening, if possible. But this team's going to look a lot like the Lions, where we don't know at the top. We have Devontae Parker, Jacoby Myers listed as the top 2. We don't know. So those guys are all, I think those guys and Hunter Henry all got to be yellow. I'd put Kendrick Bourne as orange, and then Pierre Strong, even in the James White role. Even if he has the full James White role all year, that's a big ask. So he's going to be red.
Yep, I'm with you there. New Orleans Saints, this is the one where we might have maybe 2 blues. Michael Thomas, I think we lock in for blue. Jarvis Landry, I think probably in that conversation, likely going to be green. Chris Olave, green. Do you like him yellow? 1st round pick, a lot of investment there. The Alvin Kamara situation with the suspension worries me a little bit, and then Marquez Callaway last year was their top target man, but now well behind on the depth chart.
Yeah, this one's tough. Michael Thomas, I think he definitely gets blue, but Vegas has him below 800-yard over-under.
A lot of people are down on Michael Thomas. It makes no sense. He's done nothing but in camp but show that he's healthy. Today there was a report that he had 4 targets, 4 catches, 4 touchdowns when they were running end zone drills. So,
John, should we put some money on Michael Thomas to have more than 800 yards this year? I think we should do that.
We're flying to the Fantasy Football Expo. My layover is in Chicago, where sports betting is legal. If you don't think in my 90 minutes I'm getting on all the apps I can to start making some plays, you're dead wrong.
I'm going to label my Venmo as that I send you as doing laundry so they don't pick up. I have dinner.
Yeah, so PayPal doesn't take our funds.
Yeah, exactly. So you might be getting a Venmo from me while you're in Chicago for Michael Thomas dinner. Yeah. Because I think that line is low, boy, for a guy that that has the record.
100 yards a couple years ago. What are we doing?
He has a record for most targets in the season, that guy. So yeah, Michael Thomas blue, Jarvis Landry green, Olave and Kamara both yellow. If they come out and say, hey, you know what? If they come out, this happens sometimes it happened with the Star Caps case, right? This is kind of dating how long we've been doing this, but there was the Star Caps case was a Vikings players test positive for some diuretic. And they were able to set up the court cases where they came out and said these guys are going to be able to play the whole year. And they went to the NFC Championship game, lost to the Saints who won the Super Bowl. Those guys get to play the whole year. And then one of them, they were like, okay, you guys are suspended for the first 4 games of next year. I think Kevin Williams just retired. It was like, oh, yeah, you can take your suspension and cram it. I'm done. So they were able to play the whole year. That could have easily happened with Kamara. If it does happen, I think we've got to move Kamara to green or even move
the
him
one
ahead.
issue with Kamara, even though he led the team last year in receptions, was that Jameis Winston doesn't generally throw to the running backs, right? During his time with Tampa Bay, he never threw the running backs. Last year, he didn't really throw to Kamara all that much, so that's where my worry comes with there.
Yeah, he'll probably still stay yellow in that. We'll just move. We'll keep him yellow. We'll move him ahead of Olave. Sure. But I would think you might have to move Landry to yellow in that case because it would be a little thin. But for now, Michael Thomas blue, Landry green. We like Landry a lot. Howard Bender likes Landry a lot. He's his ADP is not adjusted for the fact that he is on a new team that has a quarterback that throws a lot of picks. We don't care about that in fantasy football. You know what I mean? This guy's throwing for 33 touchdowns in a season. He's thrown for 4,000 yards. Like Jameis Winston can throw the football.
Yep, I'm with you there. Giants talking about Howard Bender. He's a Jets fan. His wife is a Giants fan now. Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, Saquon Barkley, who people are just jonesing over right now on fantasy Fantasy Football Twitter. Dale Robinson and Ricky Seals-Jones is kind of how I have that depth chart playing out, but it could really be anybody at tight end.
Yeah, it could be Daniel Bellinger, the rookie. I've been hearing good things. Ricky Seals-Jones hasn't practiced seven straight practices, so it's tough to make the team in that situation. It's not like we're talking about a guy who's been there. So I don't think I'm willing to put anybody here as blue. John, I mean, is there anybody that you look at it and you say, that dude's definitely getting 100 looks?
No.
Yeah, me neither. I'll put Kenny Golladay screen. I think I'm willing to do it.
Yeah,
I think he's...
I mean, if Tony's healthy, I think he gets there, but...
He's such a weird player.
I think I would probably put that Green. I think I would put Tony Green.
Kadarius Toney's the weirdest player in the league now. Like, I love him. Like, they should have a camera on that guy at all times. Like, he's exciting.
Remember last year, everybody thought he was the worst draft pick ever by the Giants. They couldn't believe they took him where he did. And then he started playing at like a 185-yard game. They're like,
that's crazy.
He's a round pick that is great in space and can make big plays. And now he's everybody's like favorite, like 5th-round darling or wherever he's going in draft. So, yeah. Anyways.
He's a high upside, crazy high upside play. That's why anybody that's in the second column here, doesn't matter if they're green, like all the guys that are blue are going to go early. You know what I mean? Like, you're not getting a discount on Higgins or Drake London, but anyone that's in the second column of this chart that's a yellow or green, I mean, the upside's there for those guys. Kadarius Toney, the upside's there. 189 yards catching the ball from Mike Glennon. Yep. But Barkley, got to make him yellow. He's that kind of guy.
Yep.
And then Wandale, orange.
Yeah, Wandale's going to be orange for sure. Jets, got Elijah Moore. Got Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis is your top 3 wide receivers there.
You willing to do it? You willing to do the
blue?
Put
Moore as blue. I am. Willing to put Moore as
like
blue.
It.
I think the next 2 are probably yellow, or one's yellow, one's orange. I don't know how you feel about Corey Davis, but we know he's going to be on the field a lot. I don't think Uzama gets 100 targets at all. And then the question is, do you think Berrios or Michael Carter is the next guy in targets after that? But either way, unlikely to get 100 targets.
I think what happens with that 5th spot is you get the most, and this is why I can't make Garrett Wilson green either, is that you have these like second tight ends and fullbacks. And that's what's plagued the 49ers in having a 3rd wide receiver. So it's Tyler Conklin's name is not going to go anywhere near this list, but if he plays 50% of the snaps or 40% of the snaps, that is taking a wide receiver off the field. So you definitely can't have Barrios there, and it's going to hurt one of Wilson or Davis. So I think Elijah Moore, blue, as a guy we think is going to be full-time, but there's possibility that no one's playing a full snap share. I don't know. I'm willing to put Moore as blue and Wilson and Davis as yellow as possible, but that's the scary thing for everybody else, is that a lot of these teams, they just rotate a fullback and a second tight end and a slot guy, and it's just a big mess where everyone gets like 40 targets.
Yep, I'm with you there. Raiders, Devontae Adams, lock him in, 100. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, we've gone back and forth. I think Waller's getting there. I think likely, sure. Renfro's a possible for me. And then the next 2 are in the red. Kenny Drake, Keelan Cole. And we don't even know if Keelan Cole's the next guy. He's just the next guy on the depth chart. I don't think he gets there. Yeah.
And I mean, like, there's no team on this sheet that has 1 guy that's blue and 2 guys that are green. But this team is the one that I would consider the most for that. Like, Adams has to be blue and Waller has to be green. So the question is whether you think Renfro is likely to sneak in with 100 or possible for him to get 100. What do you think, John? Should we do this as the singular blue-green team, or is that pushing too many possible or likely 100?
Throw a ton, 100% there. Yeah, I mean, sure, maybe Renfro's likely. I think it's more possible, but likely.
He's such a low ADOT guy that even 100 targets for a guy like that might translate to 800 yards. Like, he might be. I think this is just a configuration that allows, one of the rare configurations that allows for a blue-green situation where I'm willing to say likely for both those players.
Sure. Eagles have A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Kenneth Gainwell, and Quez Watkins. I think we lock in Brown there. I think then because of the passing volume, though, after that, I think maybe we go yellows. I don't know. How do you think Smith and Goddard get 100 targets here?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone listening, looking at this,
a ton last year. That's the thing. So
for anyone listening, looking at this chart, picture Devonta Smith as like a yellow green and Dallas Goedert as like a goldenrod. That's almost like orange-ish. Because I do lean more Smith than Goddard. Some of these situations where it's 2 guys and they're both yellow in the 2 and 3 slot, it's even. This one I don't think is as even. I'm almost willing to put Devonta Smith as green just to differentiate, but probably got to be yellow. I don't know, John. Smith, green or yellow? You make the call.
Yellow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a volume thing. If it was Gardner Minshew as the quarterback, I think we'd be willing to do a little more green
listen,
in
I
there.
like Jalen Hurts. I think he's going to take a step up this year, but I don't know if there's enough targets for Brown to get his 130 and Smith to get 100 and Goddard to get 100. It just seems so they're probably going to get in that range, but they might fall short. So 90 targets or something like that. So
Agreed.
Steelers, don't know who's playing quarterback for them, but they have Deontay Johnson, they have Chase Claypool, Najee Harris, Pickens, and Freiermuth.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of uncertainty. So Deontay Johnson, blue or green? He's got to be blue or green. But
I'm going blue. I think he just gets peppered with targets regardless.
Yeah, and I think everybody else.
And then I think after that it's yellow for the neck for Claypool. It's probably yellow for Najee, unlikely for Pickens, and probably red for Freiermuth here.
Yeah, dude, it has to be red for Muth, man. I did a full write-up on. I'm not going to get into it here. I did a full write-up on it. So just go look at Andrew Cooper tight end fades this year. Big explanation why I don't think Muth can be orange on this team. He's not a guy. He'll get there via touchdowns if he's going to get there for you. It's not going to be via targets.
Yeah, I agree. 49ers, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. And then after that, basically two red players. You'll never have to worry about Juwan Jennings and Ray McLeod.
Why does Vegas is so low?
I know. It's because they think Lance is going to just run, right?
Yeah.
When Garoppolo's a pocket quarterback, he's going to throw a ton. I think Lance is going to be in the same boat as like a Jalen Hurts, like Lamar Jackson, where I think one of those guys is going to get it, and the other two are going to fall short because they're just going to run too much with the quarterback in the running game.
Yeah, I think because of Vegas has me spooked on that because they have him like when you you take the guys that are going where Debo's being picked and they have him at like 1,200 yards and 7 or 8 touchdowns. You take Debo, his receiving's at 925, but they also have a line for him for rushing that's 350. So, which puts him in that 1,200 and 7 or 8 touchdown range. So it can justify his ADP, but it doesn't. Vegas got this right last year. So they seem to think that he's going to be doing a lot of running again and maybe not catching as many balls. So I think Debo and Kittle green, where it's likely they get 100, Ayuk yellow, everyone else red.
Sure.
You in on that?
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Seahawks, man, this one used to be easy.
It did. I mean, you have Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Noah Fant, D. Eskridge, and maybe DJ Dallas, but I think the last two are reds. I think Fant's probably an orange. Metcalf and Lockett, maybe possible 100 target guys. Maybe Lockett more likely than Metcalf. I don't know.
I say we do both of them green.
Okay.
Because 100 targets, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to get them. In this case, they don't even need to be quality targets. Sure. The ball goes over there. Yeah, the ball will go over there. It's just a matter of whether they're going to be able to catch enough of them. I think that there's a world where they're blue and they're still not good. You know what I mean? Like we watched Marvin Jones get 120 targets last year and be wide receiver like a billion and not do a whole lot.
40 wide receivers last year had 100 targets. So
Right. So we got a good number of guys. Virtually every team has one guy that's blue because getting 100 targets isn't anything overly special.
Yep. Buccaneers, Godwin, Evans, Julio Jones, Russell Gage, Leonard Fournette.
Blue, Julio, orange, or yellow. Russell Gage is hurt.
Yellow. I think Julio could be a yellow. Possible 100.
How hurt is Russell Gage? He's just working off over on the side, right? He's not
I haven't seen a full update yet.
I heard he was working out over on the side, pulled hamstring, but he's like still at practice. Sure. So orange.
Okay.
And then Leonard Fournette. You know,
probably a lock for under 100, but he's very involved in the passing offense. So.
Exactly. Running back, you have to be like a stud to even be considered.
Didn't they throw him 100 times in Jacksonville? Didn't he get there? Or was it close? Let's see. Leonard Fournette.
I thought it was. They did one year.
He did 100 on the dot. Last year he had 84 in 14 games.
Yeah. Still.
Over a 17 game sample, he would have had.
We'll make him orange. I'll make him orange.
He would have had 102 targets last year over 17 games.
Yeah, Ronald Jones gone. They drafted that kid though, Rashad White.
Who cares?
And
they don't play.
They still
Tom
Keyshawn
Brady doesn't
Vaughn.
play rookie. Stop. He doesn't play rookie.
Why do they keep drafting these dudes?
Keyshawn
Vaughn and Rashad White.
Everybody drafted Keyshawn Vaughn in like the 5th round. Like, what are we doing?
Don't remind me, bro. I got a team. I think I still have a team.
Tom Brady does not play with rookies. He doesn't do it.
I got a team sitting there that has. I was actually just joking about this on the Pickwise show where it's like Rashad White is like legit 20 years younger than Tom Brady, and Brady looks at Julio Jones. Dude, Brady's over 10 years older than Julio Jones. He looks at him and he's like a kid still. So it's
He's
crazy.
45.
That's crazy to me. Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm willing to do that. If we're gonna make Julio and Gage orange, then we can make Fournette orange.
Tennessee Titans, Robert Woods. I think we probably lock that in for me.
Yeah.
I think he gets in. Yeah.
Bro, his over under for yards is the same as like Michael Thomas.
Yeah, that's a mistake. I think he's the number one guy there. Treylon Burks, I think, is a possible to a likely, but we're looking at a team that ran the second most time in football for the last 3 years. So.
Yeah, this one's gonna not be a colorful one. No. If we're making Robert Woods blue, then I don't think anyone else can be green.
I agree. Like we had that weird AJ Brown, Corey Davis year, right? 2 years ago. Yeah. And I think we could be in a similar situation this year.
Yeah.
Where it's just those two guys and it's Derrick Henry.
Yeah. I think Austin Hooper you can make orange just because he's got good rapport with the quarterback.
We don't know the Treylon Burks if it's real or not. Like people are saying he's struggling. He's lining up in the wrong. He doesn't know the plays. He's dropping ball. If that camp reports are true, then he could find himself behind the target pecking order of Hooper. So
there's no such thing as a guy of saying he has to get the targets because we watched the Patriots draft N'Keal Harry in the first round, and they had terrible wide receivers, and he still didn't. There was no have to there. So there's no guarantee. There's really no guarantee.
Yep. Washington
Commanders. All right. So Terry McLaurin's blue.
Yep.
He's a lock. I think Dotson's next, right? Followed by Curtis Samuel. I know Curtis Samuel is such a weird player. He's got some conditioning issues, and so a good chunk of his production comes via weird gadget plays that aren't targets. Like when he was with the one real relevant year he had with this coach, Ron Rivera, he got 20 carries. He had 20 carries for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that's why he was fantasy relevant, not necessarily because of targets. So I'm putting Samuel as orange. I'm putting J.D. McKissick as orange just because we've seen him get 100.
Yep.
And then Logan Thomas, because he's hurt.
Yeah, it's a red for me because we just don't even know when he's even going to be close to healthy. Like last I saw, he was like walking around the practice field, but he wasn't doing anything.
So the last player to fill out this chart then will be Johan Dotson, and we're deciding.
I'm going to go yellow.
I think yellow is fair. I think making him yellow, talking through this team and making him yellow makes me more interested in him because I think he's pretty clearly.
He's blowing up in camp too. People are saying he's making catches every day.
Yeah, we have him. We drafted him.
Yeah, I believe we did.
Yeah, we drafted him in one of those best balls. So yeah, John Dotson, yellow, and that makes him interesting. So that squares away our target totem pole. I'm gonna do a little write up on it. Check out. We'll get it up on the site and hopefully have it up on the site for when you guys check out this podcast. Next week we're gonna do another one of my top secret resources. It's the running back handcuff chart. So the running back questionnaire is what I call it. So the running back questionnaire is basically we look at the different teams and we look at the basically 5 instances where you use a running back. First down, basically your early down back. Then you have third down, passing down back, goal line, 2-minute drill where you're losing, and then a situation where it's a blowout and you're up. And we're going to go in for each team and say what player we think plays in what situation. So for instance, the Steelers, the answer for all 5 of those, last year at least, was Najee Harris. So Christian McCaffrey, the answer was all 5. With a team like the Patriots historically, though, you would have Sony Michel, you would have Damian Harris on first down, and you'd have James White on third down. And when they're winning big, it's Ramondre Stevenson. Or when they're in 2-minute drills, it's James White. So it can kind of give you an idea of the usage of these guys so you can better project things. These are tools that you can look at and help you do your thing. And if you think it's different than us, that's where you can get advantage. So that's what we'll do next week. John, any last imparting wisdom on this totem pole that you think or anything you wanted to share?
No, I mean, again, I just think you got to look at the value of targets and how they impact your drafting decisions, especially, and what the fantasy value can be in certain offenses. So it'll be great to check out the article when it's released. The podcast should be out by tomorrow, I figure. If you're listening to it now, then you know it's already released. But for Group and I, probably be on the next day. So be on the lookout for that. Give us a follow on Twitter if you're not already, at Coupe Fiasco, at Impemba777. If you have any questions, you can always hit up on Twitter, or you can hit us up in the Discord. Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide is free as well. If you're not already checking that out, Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide, again, is free. The NFL cheat sheet is free. That has auction values and a draft grid on there. And then, of course, we're selling now our in-season all-access pro package. First 6 months of that are 50% off if you use code NFL50 for the monthly package there. So we got a lot of great things happening for the upcoming NFL season, and you can't really beat free when it comes to a draft guide, Coop.
No, can't beat that, man. It's a beautiful thing this year. Hopefully we keep it that way moving forward. We'll see what happens, but I like having it free because now I can engage with more people, talk to more people about it, get the info out there, and help more people win leagues. So I like when it's free, but again, we got to make a living here. We still have plenty of stuff behind the paywall for the members. Our members know the amount of tools that we offer. It's really a one-stop shop. We also made
a millionaire last year during DFS. Yeah. Week 3, Millionaire Mike. He can tell you all about it. He's in our Discord, so make sure you check that out and join. But for Coop and I, man, we'll catch you guys later.